I saw multiple people from the 214, Micah Parsons being LT 2.0, and from the 903, let's talk more about Micah Parsons. And so I think a lot of people are there.
Well, I'm with you. I mean, as long as he stays healthy, he's going to be one of the greatest, if not the greatest, defensive player in Dallas Cowboys history. It's obviously tough for us.
That's an insane bar to reach.
I think people that are our parents' age would say, look, Bob Lilly's the greatest defensive player in Dallas Cowboys history. I'm sure 50% of the people listening right now don't even know who Bob Lilly is.
Fair.
So
you can meet him at the Dallas Card Show.
Yeah, but I mean, most people would say he's the greatest Dallas Cowboys defensive player of all time. And obviously, yes, it was back in the 60s and I guess early 70s when he was playing. But yeah, he's generational. I will say this, and maybe his position is getting moved. I can't believe how good/great Smith is at tackle.
Okay. That is part.
He didn't even practice it.
That is part of and somebody did say the development of Tyler Smith. And one of the things that I noted was our offensive line depth is better than I anticipated. Like, if you told me our offensive line was shaky and then Tyron got hurt, we were effed, I would have totally believed you. But now you think about it.
I thought we were.
Yeah.
Watching, and maybe Terrence Steele, I need to put him in this too, is he did not look good in training camp.
Yeah.
And so him becoming also a good tackle on the other side is a very pleasant surprise. So if I wanted to be more general, I could say the future tackle situation looks really good because last year, going into the season, we thought it's going to be Tyron Smith and Lael Collins.
Yeah.
And probably for the next 3 years, I think we were probably going into the 2021 season going, hey, at least the next 3 years, and then we got to make some major changes as their careers come to a close. And yet this year, we've added 2 young guys, and I know Steele's been here. And
you played neither of those 2 that you mentioned, though.
And they have just been great. So I think the future at tackle looks great for the Dallas Cowboys. And I would say this, expanding.
Terrence Steele, I think, is going to be a free agent, by the way.
Already?
I think so. I'm going to double check that.
Okay. For some reason, I thought he had 1 more year left.
Maybe you're right.
I thought this was his 3rd year in the NFL. But, because wasn't COVID year his rookie year? And don't you get 4 years?
I am checking on that. I believe he is a restricted free agent.
Okay.
But you can keep him if you want, of course.
I think that, wow, I thought that the tackle situation was going to get us in a lot of trouble this year, and it has been a positive, and it looks like for the Cowboys, this is where I was going with. The Cowboys have to be known as the best evaluators of offensive linemen in the NFL.
You know, what's really funny about that, too, is you were talking about if his position's going to change. All right, let's say in our magical world that Tyron Smith comes back and he's healthy and he's ready to go. All right, well, then you probably kick Tyler Smith into left guard, although I know there's some people who would like to see him go out to right tackle. Well, Terrence Steele has done a perfectly acceptable job at right tackle. All right, well, then you're going to move him to left guard. Well, now you're bouncing off the combination of McGovern and Peters, which, I know they've had their struggles here and there, but I think they've probably been better than we anticipated. And so you would kick Tyler Smith inside to 2 different spots where you're like, kind of feel like we've done better. Hell, I even think Tyler Biotish has been better than I anticipated. Again, not the best, but I can't have an entire line of Zach Martins. I think he's been better than anticipated as well. Is another one I've got on there is this running back room is a beast. Okay. I felt like we had hoped that was the case, but Zeke still shows you that he has his struggles. And I know we're going to do this topic at some point coming up, I believe at 1 o'clock. I think you can make an argument that the Cowboys have the best tandem of running backs in the league. And if you don't think it's them, I certainly think they should be in the top 3. I could see if people think they're second, but I think they should be second or third. And then Trayvon Diggs. Trayvon Diggs, I feel like, has evolved once again and gotten even better. Take these rankings for what you want, but Pro Football Focus had him as the top-ranked deep cover corner in the league going into last week. And so I think that the evolution of Trayvon Diggs has been tremendous. From the 4.69 turpentine That's it.
Really? I mean, he's been good
for return. Like I will tell you this, Mike, and I actually have no idea where you stand on this. Is I am not a person who thinks you necessarily have to get Kevontae Turpin significantly mixed within the offense. I just like the fact that you have one of the best return people in the league. And I'm pretty stoked about that.
You think that's a TCU fan texting that in?
No, not necessarily. I actually, Mike, I don't think so. I think there's a lot of people that feel that exact same way. From the 469, Brett Maher has been very solid.
Yeah, that's true. And especially when we were interviewing the Texas Tech kicker,
man,
in training camp, and thinking that was the new kicker, and then that didn't work out. The other guy, who I already forget his name, didn't work out.
Yes, no, that is absolutely Harulahu. Now I want to read this, just so we get an idea of how some people think. From the 609. My God, Micah is a generational talent. Have you guys watched how he's been completely neutralized the last 4 games? All right. I don't know if you're not paying attention to the games or what's been happening, but let's just take the last 4 games where Micah has been completely neutralized. In those 4 games, he has 22 tackles, 4 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery, and a touchdown. Those and 2 passes defensed. Those are the 4 games in which he's been neutralized. He's averaging more than 5 tackles per game, a sack per game, and almost a turnover per game, and he has a touchdown.
I feel like they intentionally do that to try to set us off, because there's no human that can believe that. It's kind of like the same person that texts in, Luka's not that good.
Right.
It's like, I just think I think they're just trolling to see if they can get a response.
Okay. Well, you might be
But I'm glad
right.
you said it. I'm not saying maybe that person really believes that. And you know what? You can believe whatever you want.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, you're the only human being on the face of the earth that believes that. Every single coach in the NFL, every single player in the NFL doesn't believe that. Most everybody who's watching Dallas Cowboy games, whether it's the opponent or whether it's us, the fans of the Cowboys, don't believe it. But you can go ahead. You can believe whatever you want.
What have been the biggest negative developments for the Cowboys thus far this season?
Kevin wrote a whole sheet, Derek. Now go through your whole sheet and list 1 through 10 on what's gone wrong with this 6-2 Dallas Cowboys team.
I only wrote down 3 things.
3?
That's 3 too many.
I also acknowledged the person who said, "Hey, Kevin, what the hell?" All right, I approve of that. I really do. All right. So the number one thing that I wrote down, and hopefully you guys will think this is fair, is the players we feared might get hurt got hurt in Tyron Smith, Dak, and now Zeke. Now, luckily for Zeke, it's only been the 1 game, and we had Jerry on earlier. He says he anticipates Zeke being back for the Packers, but Dak obviously missed multiple games. We've been pretty much the entire season without Tyron Smith, and you just hate to see that some of your players that had gotten hurt in the past are getting hurt again. Now, the fact that they've been able to weather that just fine
lost 1 game.
is astonishing.
That's what I was going to say, too. With all the injuries and everything that's happened with the Cowboys, that's got to be a huge positive to be 6-2. So I don't know where you're going to get these negative things at, since you're such a hater right now.
You know what? I might need to read some of the text from the 210 Jabril Cox. That has been, I don't know what.
Not just him. I pair him also with Jalen Tolbert, like 2 young guys that you were hoping would contribute this season that haven't really had an opportunity on the field.
Okay, now I'm glad that you've joined us here. That was my next line item to go along with those, because I think we can discuss these all together. Is Kelvin Joseph and Deshaun Wright haven't developed to the point where they have really challenged for playing time without injury. Like, you've seen Kelvin Joseph because of an injury. And I know people will say special teams, and I appreciate that, but that's not what you drafted him in the 2nd round, is to play special teams. So it is concerning. You asked earlier about Tristan Hill being let go, and he's a high draft pick. Jalen Tolbert, you haven't seen that development. I know Jabril Cox was not as high of a draft pick, but you still haven't seen him be able to get on the field. And then Kelvin Joseph and Deshaun Wright haven't been able to get meaningful playing time outside of special teams. If I had to note negative developments, I think that would be one of them.
Okay.
Is fair?
Very fair. Not everybody can develop. I'm sure that if we look at right now Philadelphia, who's undefeated, that we could go through their last 3 to 4 years of drafting and find, heck, didn't they draft the kid from TCU, Rager?
Yeah.
Right.
There's misses for sure.
Right. I mean, everybody has them. So it's
Justin Jefferson.
Yeah. And so I look at the Cowboys. It is right. I mean, you wish that your second round pick, Kelvin Joseph, would be way better. You wish that we were hearing positive things about Jalen Tolbert through this whole, you got to trade through for a wide receiver. I think the hope was from the Cowboys and Cowboy fans is, all right, hey, Jalen Tolbert didn't have the best training camp. Jalen Tolbert came from a small school. But when we get closer to Thanksgiving, Jalen Tolbert will be showing Michael Gallup-like development, what we saw from him being a third-round pick. And we haven't heard a thing about Jalen Tolbert really improving much throughout this season. So I think that's why they're looking at other wide receivers.
I'm going to read some of these fan texts because some of these are hurtful, but some of them are also super clever. From the 214, Kevin is the one student that says, teacher, you forgot to pick up the homework. And from the 972, oh, sure, it's okay for Kevin. He has a Noah, so he can handle the rain. Okay, that is very clever. I at least wanted to shout that out. From the, let's see, I had one more, unless y'all have any others before we get back to the fan text.
I mean, go ahead, Kevin. What else has gone totally wrong for this season?
I actually think you're going to agree with me on this one, too.
Let's see, Derek.
Dalton Schultz might not have been worth that franchise tag after all.
I agree.
Wow.
You agree too, Mike. I know that you do.
He was unbelievable against the Bears, and he decided not even to come out of the game with an injury to protect his career.
Is that really what you think is happening?
I do think this a little bit. I'm not a Dalton Schultz hater. I don't think they should give Dalton Schultz another franchise tag. I think that they're showing that they have two capable tight ends that are developing into what they need, and you can always draft another tight end in the second, third, fourth, fifth round that you feel like can develop. The way that Dalton Schultz did is I do think that Dalton Schultz is doing the smart thing. And I bet, Derek, you can talk about this. Sometimes agents will look at where you're at, the lack of commitment from an organization that you're with, and go, hey, if you're not close to 100%, if you go out there and look bad or you get really hurt, that doesn't help me in the open market if you're going to be in the open market. So I do think Dalton Schultz has, and I understand why he's doing it, protected his career a little bit.
Agreed with that. That's spot on. Agents will always talk about, like, I've had that, like, hey, you're not performing, though. We're not going to be able to, do you really want to take your risk of going somewhere else? So that's what I was going to ask you, too. Is it lack of commitment from the team, or is it lack of performance?
And I also wonder, to your point, like, I get the broader idea. I wonder how much money he's costing himself. Because, like, right now, I know he's been hurt, but he's projected out for the season, 43 catches, 431 yards, and no touchdowns. Like,
I think he'll be better than that because projections are he's putting up a 0 stat when he's not healthy. So I think that he could have a pretty big second half because as long as he's healthy and Dak is healthy, there is a chemistry there that we did see in the Chicago game. I know I was exaggerating 100%. A little bit, but there's a good chemistry between those two, and those two being healthy together really like feeding off of each other.
Again, some of these are really clever. From the 361, I can't believe Kevin hates teachers and education. I married a teacher. And from the 254, Kevin, why don't you like the Cowboys? Dutch and Mike love the Cowboys. Even Reggie loves the Cowboys. Yeah. What's up with that?
I mean, I'm not going to go that far. I like the Cowboys. I don't love.
I mean, what's next on your list on why this season has just the season on the brink is what you're calling it?
No, it's not season on the brink. Is my next question was going to be, how do we feel about the possible regression of Anthony Brown? Because if you go back to that Chicago game, is he fell down on the touchdown, and then the two, I'm being totally serious, the two deep passes before that, if it wasn't one underthrown, he got cooked, and then the other one got dropped.
I understand, and I know that some people get mad at me for this, but I am going to go to what I know the best, and that is baseball. I do feel like cornerbacks, I want to make sure not saying cornerbacks can fall into that relief pitcher situation where sometimes a relief pitcher can be good for like 3 years in a row, and then they just have a bad year. You're like, what happened? Are they bad at baseball now? And some teams will let them go going, hey, they're not good anymore. One of the examples, one of your teammates was like Darren O'Day. He had kind of a bad year with Texas after having some good years. Like, hey, let him go. And then 5 years later, he had 5 consistently good years in other organizations. I remember him being with Baltimore, and I think he was with a couple other organizations. But I think Anthony Brown is still a solid cornerback, but he is having a bad year.
Okay, so I could certainly concede that. I'm not ready to be like, you need to be done with Anthony Brown. I just wish he was playing better.
Yeah.
And I also kind of wish, and this is probably not realistic, that less teams were taking notice and advantage of it, because he's targeted more than any cornerback in all of football this year.
I do think it goes hand in hand. I do think that Diggs is a top 5 cornerback in the league. And so when you have him being a top 5 cornerback in the league, you're going to go, well, let's look the other way. And then when you're looking the other way, you're having so much success, it even puts more on Brown's plate.
And I wanted to throw some of these out, even if I don't totally agree with them or agree with them at all, from the 682. Negative is you didn't trade CeeDee Lamb.
Why would you do that?
That's the Philadelphia Eagle fan guy from yesterday or whatever. There's trolling to see if we can get way off topic on something silly.
Well, let me ask you this, since we brought up CeeDee Lamb. Do you feel like the receiving core has been up to expectations this year?
I actually...
Obviously, they had to deal with going with Cooper Rush and then coming back to Dak, so kind of keep that in there.
I kind of think I do, because I think they've lived up to our expectations. The Cowboys spun it a certain way, but that's why I have the biggest concerns about Jalen Tolbert, right? Is because Jerry talked earlier when you asked the question about Tristan Hill. It's like, oh, we got a lot of depth there and everything. Okay, I can live with that. And Kelvin Joseph and Nashawn Wright. Okay, maybe I can live with that. Wide receiver is a spot where it feels like, come on down. Can you catch the football? We are interested. And we spent a 3rd-round pick on Jalen Tolbert, and they're like, but not you. Who else is available? I think that's why I'm more concerned about Tolbert than anybody else. But I thought Jerry made a fair point last week when he said, give Michael Gallup a second, especially since he's only had Dak now for 2 weeks. I thought he looked way better, especially in the first half in that game against the Bears.
I thought for sure, Derek, to your question about this, I thought for sure that the Cowboys going into the start of the season with Tyron Smith being hurt and probably his career coming to a close.
Yeah.
I know that they're hoping he comes back in about 3 to 4 weeks and helps out this team, but we can see that his career is pretty much over. His body is failing him. And I thought they're going to have to take an offensive lineman when this draft comes up. Now I'm not so sure they're going to have to, as long as they re-sign Terrence Steele to a long-term contract. You have the other Smith that you drafted in the first round, and Zach Martin still looks like he has some good years left, and other guys have stepped up. I'm wondering if now they'll be leaning more towards taking a wide receiver with one of their first picks in this draft, if not their first round pick, whether it falls at pick 22 or pick hopefully 32.
32. Yeah, Bijan Robinson or that.